I'm talking about my brothers being difficult. They are very functioning adults now. My brother that didn't read till he was 9, I remember seeing him struggle and cry over how to sound out the letters and phonics. And he's an engineer for the Army now. And my brother that 2 math problems and 2 laps around the house all day. That's what he did. He is very successful working for the water board. And I saw my mom be faithful with that. And that reinforced to me that these are our children and that it is our job to see that they thrive.
Welcome to the very first episode of the Christian Home Educators Association of California, or CHEA for short, California Homeschool Podcast, where we equip and encourage families on their private Christian homeschooling journey. Today, we continue our mission of supporting parents' God-given right to direct their children's education and training. For over 40 years, CHEA has served California's homeschooling community through resources, support, and events that strengthen families committed to private home education and discipleship. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Betsy Pierce, a second-generation homeschooling mom of 8 children, ages 3 to 18. Betsy and her husband Nathan met while studying at Masters University. They moved to Placer County in 2004 when Nathan began his work at Family Protection Ministries, something that has become a calling for the entire family. Having been homeschooled herself, Betsy now carries that legacy forward, and last year they celebrated their eldest child's graduation. In our conversation, Betsy will share her unique perspective on homeschooling from both sides, as a student and now as a teacher. We'll discuss how her own homeschool experience influenced her decision to educate her children at home, and she'll offer encouragement for families considering this path. Later in the program, we're going to highlight CHEA's upcoming annual convention on May 15th through 17th at Biola University in La Mirada. This is where families from across California gather for inspiring workshops, curriculum shopping, and community building that equips them to homeschool with confidence and conviction. So let's get started with our conversation with Betsy. Oh, hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be talking today with Betsy Pierce on our CHEA's very first homeschool podcast. And this podcast is just for people looking to find out more information about homeschooling. And Betsy is definitely one of the best people to talk about in this state, as she has quite an amazing story. So thank you, Betsy, for being our very first guest.
You're welcome.
Yes, and I know you're having quite a busy day, so thank you for even fitting us into your busy schedule.
Happy to do it.
But the reason it's so exciting to talk to Betsy today is that she was actually homeschooled herself. So we get to hear a little bit about her past experience as well as her homeschooling her own children now. So Betsy, tell us a little bit about your family's decision to homeschool. Do you remember when and why your parents made that decision?
So I don't remember it happening, but I have heard my mother talk about it. And from what I was told, it largely actually had to do with my brothers, because I have 3 brothers and my father, who are all poster child examples of ADHD. Very active, can't sit still, hard to focus. And so what I was told is when my older brother was 5, they wanted to be, good Christian parents. So they sacrificed and put him in a private Christian school. And he was a train wreck because he was a very active little boy and couldn't sit still and ran around the classroom. And then he would get detention, which meant during recess, he had to sit still. And then he'd get back into the classroom and run around again. And it didn't work. And my mother recognized this and started trying to find answers. And so she started researching and reading and somehow came up with homeschooling. I'm the second child, and I would have been what's probably considered the easy kid, pretty mild. But then I had 2 more brothers, and they had personalities and energies also. And homeschooling, I think, was the obvious choice for them because there was no way they could have flourished in a traditional classroom. So I was homeschooled because of the brothers that I had in my family. So and like I said, I was 4 when this started. I don't remember, but I have heard this story, over the years.
Wow.
And not fitting in the traditional classroom sit-down box.
Wow. And your mom definitely sounds like she had her hands full. I
She did.
had 3 boys, but no girls. So I understand the 3 boys absolutely. Um, so what was a typical day like for you homeschooling, especially with all those boys around?
I actually remember more of what I saw her do with them than what I did myself. I think because I was a good reader early, but I remember watching her homeschool my brothers. With my brothers, I remember, okay, a couple math problems, run around the house twice. A couple more problems, run around the house twice. We did co-ops at various times that, little like projects of Konos. It was a lot of, we did some Konos where we got together and studied the explorers or navigation or something like that. I remember doing those things. But for me growing up, I did a lot of independent work. At least for me, I could self-teach because I was bent that way. So I remember reading my Saxon math and read it. She handed me stacks and stacks and stacks of books because I liked reading literature.
So you sound like your every homeschool mom's dream.
I'm wondering if my brothers are going to see this. Like, that's not what I remember. I remember you, doing this or that. But
Oh,
that's what I recall. For me,
yeah.
it was a lot of independent, lots and lots of reading, lots of literature, lots of books. I read every book we had.
Amazing. Do you have a favorite memory, just a specific homeschool memory?
It was probably just the amount of free time reading that I did get to do, because I could, explore all the different subjects, and I read things that I enjoyed. And I mean, I didn't really understand at the time that I had a lot of free time, but now looking back, I know I did. But I just remember loving the reading.
Is there anything about homeschooling that you think helped shape your faith?
It reinforced God's role for me as a woman. I saw my mom be very faithful with children that were hard to educate with. I'm talking about my brothers being difficult. They are very functioning adults now. My brother that didn't read till he was 9, I remember seeing him struggle and cry over how to sound out the letters and phonics. And he's an engineer for the Army now. And my brother that 2 math problems and 2 laps around the house all day. That's what he did. He is very successful working for the water board. And I saw my mom be faithful with that. And that reinforced to me that these are our children and that it is our job to see that they thrive. Not, well, they're not doing well in a classroom. Oh, well, it's not my fault. But she owned the responsibility, and she owned that these were her children. And I watched that play out. So I think it really emphasized that to me, the value when God talks about a wife being and a mother being a keeper of the home and to teach her children. I really saw that. It emphasized to me, I knew that I was going to want to be that for my children someday, because I watched my mom walk that road and watched it be a challenging road and watched how God used her faithfulness.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like she really modeled that for you in a very tangible way, something you could see day in and day out. And now you're homeschooling your own children, all 8 of them, which that is fantastic. I love that. So then it sounds like you always knew that this was the path you wanted to take, that you always also wanted
Yes.
to homeschool your own kids.
My husband and I might be a little bit unique. He was also homeschooled. I went to a public high school. He was homeschooled K through 12. But it was a requirement when anybody I dated that you have to agree with homeschooling or this isn't going to work out. And we came into even dating before we were even engaged, knowing that that was the life that we intended to live together. And even more so because he was going into homeschooling advocacy as a career. My husband, he's Nathan Pierce, and he works for Family Protection Ministries. And he knew that when we started getting to know each other. So it was always a goal for us. I would say we didn't know what it was like to be on the parent end of homeschooling family. We only knew what it was like from the kid end, and it's very different. I thought I knew more than I actually did when I got into it. But it always was an agreement with us. We always knew that we wanted to raise our children in the faith. We knew that it was our job to teach them that faith. We were convinced that this was not only the best plan for them, but this was God's calling for us. So I know that's not what other women have faced. There are other women that have had to convince their husbands, or husbands that have had to convince their wives. But for me, we always wanted to do this, always wanted to live this life. Sometimes we make that joke when it's really hard. Hey, still living the dream over here, right? And he's like, yeah, we really, the dream is, there's something's exploding in the house. But yeah, always knew that. He always knew that. It was a conviction going in.
Definitely unique, I'm sure. But what a beautiful story, and what a beautiful testimony of God's faithfulness to both of you. And that he brought you together to be able to live this dream together of homeschooling all of those children. And your children are beautiful. So yeah, that is amazing. When you think of how you were homeschooled and you think of how you're homeschooling now, is there anything you think you tried to recreate, or do you think you're just doing this completely different than what you experienced as a homeschool child?
I think biblical theology and biblical content is a much greater emphasis in our home. My parents were believers and took us to church, but we didn't do a lot of scripture reading and, Christian theology and life discussion at home. That was at church. And we have tried to definitely make that a bigger emphasis in our home. I try to be more controlling, I think, and maybe that's not necessarily a good thing. I have more kids than my mom did. There were 5 of us. I have 8. So, that has changed what we've done. I don't have children with the same level of energy that my brothers were. So I know that drove some of their differences. I have imitated the books everywhere. There are books everywhere in my house. And most of my kids are very much into reading. And so that's been a big part of our education that I've definitely copied. I've used some of the same curriculum. Actually, in fact, some of the books that I'm using are the same books that I had in my house. Some of the readers that my mom used with my little brothers, she saved them and passed them on to me. And so it's kind of neat. It's got both of our names written in it. There's a little bit of a legacy that I've been able to show my kids. That's been kind of fun seeing that handout. She gave me a big stack of, American history books that I've used with my kids. That I've really liked that aspect. One difference is I'm definitely sticking out homeschooling through high school, and there are more opportunities now than, in the late 90s when I was in high school. My kids are involved in so many opportunities: homeschooling speech and debate, homeschooling co-ops, homeschooling drop-offs. Yes. There's more for me to choose from. And I don't know if they would have made different decisions if these options were available back then. But I would say that for me as a homeschool mom, I have to say no to a lot of good things. Instead of searching out 1 or 2 good things, I'm having to say no to lots of good things because there's so many opportunities.
Yes, that is so true.
So I'd say that's a big difference. I don't remember running everywhere like I feel like I do as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're right. There's definitely a lot more choices, activities, groups to belong to than there were, I think, even 10 or 15 years ago, as we see homeschooling really start to increase and grow, which is exciting. But yeah, each family has to take a step back and say, okay, what's best for my family? And when I imagine the more kids you have, the more activities you have, because even if just one of them's in one thing, times 8, that's a lot. So,
Yes.
yes, balancing. Absolutely. So, would you say that you have like a homeschool philosophy that you and Nathan have held to? I mean, you've definitely, it sounds like approaching education, with more of a biblical worldview has been important, not just, reading the Bible on Sunday, but making it a part of your life. But would you hold on to a certain philosophy, something like what that would define your family specifically?
We are pretty eclectic.
And for
I
those
know
who
there's
don't
only
know what that means, what does eclectic mean?
so, there are people that have a definite philosophy, like we are in a classical education and our kids all speak Greek. I haven't been able to do that, especially when I started out. I was trying to balance what I could afford and what worked for my children, which my oldest child and my second child, my first two are two girls, and they are very different from each other. And I didn't expect that, especially when the oldest one is not like me. And it's forced me to come out of what my preconceived plan would have been because my idea didn't fit. And I've discovered that very quickly. So I have had to look for curriculum that just worked for us. I have tried to find things that more fit my family's lifestyle, which for me has always been, I've always got a baby on the way, or I'm nursing a baby, or I have to find something that I can teach to multiple ages at the same time, or something that I can pass down because I don't want to have to repurchase the book 8 times. So I like hardbacks. Or I found this one for free. Somebody was giving it away. That sounds like a good reason to use it to me. Back when money was really tight, when we were first starting out and we only had a couple of kids, it was very tight. And so I've been driven by a lot of those factors. I would say I've generally tried to always incorporate character because I heard this this quote. I read it in a book by Lori Bluedorn, and it said, without character, you won't be able to teach anything else anyway. And that really resonated with me, that if my child is disobedient or rude, they're never going to listen to me talk about 1776. So what would be the point? So we've tried to emphasize that. We've tried to emphasize serving, especially within the family. And when you have 8 kids, serving within your family takes a lot of time. We do have literature everywhere. We have books everywhere. I have so many bookshelves, and I need more because we got more books at Christmas, and they're still laying in weird places. I haven't found them a spot yet. So literature has always been a big emphasis. I love learning through like living history. I guess that's a Charlotte Mason approach. I do love that approach. And I think it probably comes from me remembering my own childhood, which I don't remember being taught in school a lot of the facts, but I remember pulling the encyclopedia off the wall and pulling the Usborne books off the wall and remembering all of that. And then when I was older, I realized I had a ton of knowledge that I had picked up through reading. So a little bit of literature base, a little bit of what I can afford and what can I make happen.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. You balanced it, you're flexible, and you're covering all your bases, and it's working. And that's amazing, because I love how you mentioned, money is tight sometimes. So we can't afford to buy really expensive curriculum, but there's always a way. There's always a way, and you've made it work. And that's a fantastic testimony. Now, just thinking about your family, do you think that homeschooling is really strengthening the relationship between like you and your kids with all the siblings? Do you think it's bringing them closer together versus if they had been at, different schools all day? What do you think about that?
I would say definitely. I don't know how I would have time to address character issues in my family if I wasn't with my kids. There's too many of them. And it takes time, to dig into their hearts and to ask them questions and to build that relationship. And I just think we wouldn't if I didn't have them home with me and I didn't get to see their issues coming out regularly. It's allowed me to know them better. Now, being home all day does mean we have opportunities to clash against each other more because somebody wants to practice the piano and somebody else wants to be listening to an Andrew Pudewa video in the dining room, and those two things don't work at the same time. So it has forced us to deal with our issues. My kids joke about that. I say, even if I had $1 billion and got a 15-bedroom house, I would make them share rooms, because I think that by being in close proximity, that is how you learn to die to self. And that is how you learn to act in love towards the other person. And I think homeschooling has done that because we have had to learn to get along, and it's forced it. Here's a good example. So my second and my third child, I hope they're okay with me talking about them. I won't say their names, but they were having a lot of relationship issues last year. They're both teenagers. And then this year they got partnered up to be debate partners. And I was pretty nervous that it was going to work. I thought, are they just going to quarrel and bicker and not understand each other? And this is a major part of their high school and homeschooling. But by being partnered, it has actually forced us all as a family to address the issues. And so I can't brush things under the rug. And they have had, because they're both motivated, they want to do well, they have been forced to learn to be gentle or learn to grow a thicker skin. And their conflicts have to be addressed. But because we had to address them, there is so much improvement and growth there that I am just so grateful to God that they've had this opportunity. But I know that if I didn't have to, I would have been tempted to not deal with the issues, because I'm tired sometimes. And it's like, really, we're going to bicker about this again? But homeschooling has made it happen. And I would say I have one graduate, and she went through a difficult period in her early teens. And she knows I talked to her about this, and she says, yeah, I know, I was hard, Mom. But, I had to keep loving her. And there were days I wanted to throw in the towel and say, I'm done dealing with you. But I didn't. And she knows that I didn't. And I was able to see God soften her and grow her, and the Holy Spirit is working in her. And I'm glad now that I was able to keep doing that, instead of telling her, what, you're just too hard for me. God is not faithful enough. I can't keep doing this. And maybe, I don't want to be judgmental towards other people that come up with other decisions. I know that there are hard situations, but I am glad that homeschooling has forced us to deal with our flesh and deal with our sin, because we have stronger relationships because of it. My younger ones, they're great friends. They play all the time. And some of that is personality and training, but it's because they're together. And I think that we are stronger in that. We have a stronger family culture. And I don't know that I would have time to build, the family culture that we have if we didn't homeschool.
Those are such beautiful examples. And thank you for not throwing in the towel. I know that is something I will tell people, especially if they ask, like, how do I raise these teenage boys? You just have to love them through it. You have to love them through it. It's hard. It's difficult. They're all different, but praise God, we get to the other side, and now you have one graduated, which is exciting. It's exciting. And yeah, and you're seeing these relationships build and grow and mend. And that's just one of the most important things that I think can come out of homeschooling. So that's awesome. I thank you so much for sharing all of these really, personal and practical homeschool stories with us. And I want to just, we're almost done, but I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about CHEA a little bit. Of course, I want to talk about the convention, but just also for you personally as a family, how has CHEA helped you? Have there been any resources that have been that you've used? Or, obviously, we're family, CHEA and FPM. So you've been around CHEA for a long time, but just for you personally, how has CHEA helped you in your homeschooling?
Well, I've been coming to the CHEA convention before I was married, because I came to check it out to see what I was getting into with this guy that I think we were engaged at that point. I would say that CHEA's published resources have been a huge help to me. I have used the intro manual until the parts that I needed, I had memorized. The forms in there, the references, the how to set up my independent private school, very helpful. And then I got to high school. And then I got to the high school handbook, and that was very, very helpful. And then just recently, we've been doing driver's ed, and I got the driver's training manual and walked me through that process. And so actually, I forgot to mention preschool. It started at preschool, the preschool book. So I have really used CHEA's published resources a lot. I have been sitting in CHEA sessions for a lot of years. And I would say I've gotten a lot of encouragement and good ideas that I don't know that I would have done just Googling on the internet. I heard Andrew Poodlebaugh, talking about him again, was a speaker at a conference that I attended with my husband when my oldest was 6, 7, 8, something like that, somewhere in there. I don't know. And hearing him give a philosophy and an approach, I just knew that was going to work for us. And so it's directed a lot of the curriculum that I choose. I use a lot of his curriculum. But I don't think I would have, Googled a session by him and listened to it vague. It was hearing him in person that was helpful to me. I've heard philosophies of parenting and things like that have been very helpful. That's attending conventions. I have liked looking at curriculum by hand rather than, the Christian book catalog. That's not helpful to me. I like being able to look at curriculum and talk to the vendors about it. And that has helped me decide what I think would work for my family. Like I learned this one reading curriculum phonics was too many little parts cutting apart and putting together. And I looked at that and I said, there's no way. I've got 3 babies. I'm nursing one and I'm pregnant and this is way too many little pieces. I can't do this. I like this one. That's just a book, with instructions in the back. I can do that. So seeing those things in person helped me make a lot of my decisions, especially in the early years. I would say it was very, very helpful when I was new and I was still coming up with my ideas and still, formulating and finding my path. I'm a little more, okay, well, I've been doing this for a while. We're going to, I kind of already know my groove, but certainly when I was trying to figure that out, and I say that as somebody who was homeschooled, I thought I was going to know more than I did. And then I was faced with it. And suddenly I went, I have no clue, because I remember being homeschooled in junior high. I do not remember what happened when I was 5. And my mom had 3 siblings after me. So when I had a 5-year-old and I had little kids after that, I had no memory to go on. And I felt like, wow, I'm just starting out too. I don't know what I'm doing.
So if there's somebody listening who is maybe on the fence, they just, they've heard about convention, but they're just not sure if, it's worth the time, the money, the effort, because we know it's an effort to, take that weekend away. What would you say to them if they just can't decide if they should go or not?
I think it's really worth going. You will be encouraged. It's encouraging to be around other homeschooling families. It's worth it to take a look at some things. Take a look around the curriculum hall, see what you can see, put your hands on things and look at them. It's worth talking to other experienced homeschoolers. It might let you help meet other homeschoolers in your area. So the conventions in Los Angeles, if you can connect and get a support group going if you're brand new, that's you have to have that. You have to have support. There's no way to do this as an island. You will burn. You will crash and burn out and quit. It happens. I've seen it over and over again. You have to have that community around you. And it can be a good place to do that. You do have to watch out that you don't walk in and get overwhelmed because everybody else looks like they know what they're doing and they don't. Maybe they've just been around a little longer, but talk to people and say, I don't know. This is a place to talk to people and be humble, and nobody is snobby. And nobody's looking like nobody has
very
it all
nice.
together.
Yes.
I would say it's worth going. It is worth going, and it is a lot. And it's, frankly, as moms, it's hard to get away and think sometimes for a few minutes. So if you go to a convention, especially if you can get a babysitter, and I know it's hard, there is a children's convention, and that's great. But if you can come away and focus, and think and maybe journal a few thoughts if you're into the journaling thing, or sometimes I have to look at stuff and then I need some time to digest it. Like I can't react to it immediately. I have to let my reaction come a couple hours later while I'm taking a shower and I can finally think. It can be that time to think through that, see some different ideas. So I would say come and be exposed, try to build some connections.
And you have now officially come full circle as being homeschooled yourself to attending convention to finding out what it's all about. Now you're a speaker at convention. And what you just said, five different. So people can come actually sit in on one of your workshop sessions if they want to hear more about what you have to share. Can you give us a little hint about anything you'll be sharing at any of your workshops?
Yeah. I always joke like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll come and talk to people, but you get what you pay for, right? So I'm going to be talking about teaching when you have multiples, which I am going to have 6 on my affidavit this year. So I think that qualifies, but what to do when there's more of them than there are of you. And I'll just be sharing what I've done well and what hasn't gone well. So just kind of open the door into my life. I'll be talking about preschool. I have an approach to preschool that I think is very doable, very life-centric, non-intimidating. And so I'll be presenting that vision. And again, kind of talking about, it's mostly how I've done it. But I think it's non-threatening for a lot of parents that are worried about if they do something wrong when they're 3, will they get into Harvard later? No fear about that. I'll be talking about record keeping, how to get your paperwork in order. I actually like paperwork. So this is a good session for me. I like it when the papers are all lined up and in stacks properly filed. But just like the basics, what papers do you need to keep keep your legal requirements done, a record keeping, basically. What records do you have to keep so that you're in compliance and you're done? I'll be doing that one. I think I'll be doing what kind of homeschooler are you? Like, what flavor are you? Are you classical? Are you Charlotte Mason? Are you unschooler? And if you don't know what those terms mean, you can come find out. And kind of like a checklist to guard against burning out, especially if you're in leadership. It is very easy to burn out and to expend yourself for your family and then expend yourself for the homeschooling community and then expend yourself, for your church community. And that does not honor God when you are completely fried that you can't do anything well and you become a Martha instead of a Mary. That's me. So
those all sound amazing. On
that one a bit.
Well, yes. I think most homeschool moms have a little bit of Martha in them or a lot of Martha in them. So any final last words of encouragement, maybe to somebody who is deciding if they even want to homeschool? Is it even worth it?
Yes. It is worth it. I know everybody talks about this verse, but you shall speak to them of the scriptures when you lie down and when you wake up and when you walk by the way. And that to me is why I homeschool, so that I have an opportunity to speak the scriptures to my kids when the attitude comes during math and when there's joy over a book that we're reading, or when, they're poking each other at the lunch table. I want to be able to speak the scriptural truth to my kids. And I can't do it any other way. I couldn't speak the scripture to them any other way than this. And I would say, it is a career. It is a challenge. This is my job. And I I have to see it that way, and I have to protect that time as that. And you will have to too. It cannot be just a side thing that you add in. Like I'm doing 500 things and I'll add homeschooling in there too. No, it's a whole thing to hold. But God is faithful and it's worth it. It is, because this is discipling our kids, and we are called to disciple them however we do it. And I don't want to be all, look down on anybody else for, their decisions. They make that between them and God, but we are all called to disciple our kids. And I don't know how else to impart a biblical worldview and have time to train their character, without this. So do it and pray for grace, and come to the Chia Convention and get advice and find a community so you have support on the hard days, and so that you can encourage others on the hard days as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, that just for opening your heart, letting us have a little bit of peek into your family's life. I'm sure many people were encouraged that were listening. So thank you so much. And we'll be seeing you in just a couple weeks at convention.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Come and talk to me at the convention.
Yes.
That's why I'm there. Let's all encourage each other.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Betsy. All right. We will talk soon. We'll see you in May. Thank you for joining us for this first episode of the CHEA California Homeschool Podcast. We hope Betsy's story and insights have encouraged you in your own homeschooling journey. Don't forget about our upcoming annual Parenting and Homeschool Convention on May 15th through 17th at Biola University in La Mirada. It's the perfect opportunity to connect with other homeschooling families, explore curriculum options, attend inspiring workshops, and be refreshed in your calling as a home educator. If you've been blessed by today's conversation, we invite you to partner with us in supporting Christian homeschooling families across California. Your donations help us continue providing resources, support, and events that strengthen the homeschool community. Please visit our website at www.cheaofca.org. That's www.cheaofca.org. You can find out about convention registration, donation opportunities, read our blog, and a multitude of resources to equip your homeschool journey. Be sure to subscribe to the CHEA California Homeschool Podcast wherever you get your podcasts, so you don't miss our upcoming episodes featuring more inspiring stories and practical homeschool wisdom. Until next time, may God bless you and your family as you educate for His glory.